Can you be both deeply empathetic and emotionally unshakable? What if your greatest strength in love and life came from mastering both resilience and understanding? In this enlightening episode of The Love Machine, I'm joined by the extraordinary Shermin Kruse, author, speaker, professor, and the mind behind the upcoming book, Stoic Empathy, the roadmap to a life of influence, self-leadership, and love. Stoicism and empathy may sound like polar opposites, but when they're harnessed together in a science-backed practice, they can help you correct power imbalances, improve your emotional control, and completely shift the way you show up in every relationship, romantic, professional, or personal. Today, we will learn a form of cognitive empathy, the ability to understand someone else's emotions and thoughts without becoming entangled in them. Paired with Stoic principles, this becomes a transformative tool for emotional mastery, confident dating, and effective communication. Did you know that in studies, people with high emotional intelligence have 60% better relationship outcomes than those who rely purely on charm or chemistry alone? So whether you're a high achiever in the boardroom, navigating modern dating, or simply wanting to grow as a better human, this conversation today will hopefully change how you see empathy, power, and connection. Charmaine, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I feel flattered.
Did I get the name of a book right?
You got the name of the book perfectly.
Wonderful. That
Well
is the
done.
most important thing for you today,
It
because you've
really
got you've
is,
got this brand
honestly.
new book that's come out, haven't you? And
Yeah.
it's a fascinating topic. So can we start at the beginning? What exactly is Stoicism and, of course, Stoic empathy?
Stoicism is often misunderstood. Some people think that it is perhaps a lack of feeling or a kind of a numbness, right?
Mm.
Instead, though, the whole point of Stoicism is to regulate our emotional experiences and be in control of them so that they can fulfill us more rather than deny them and pretend they don't exist.
Mm.
So it's which is actually much more difficult because it's actually quite easy to just decide you're not going to feel things anymore, right? And sometimes it's quite a natural response to trauma. But deciding that you're going to be in control of your experiences while you are experiencing the world is an extraordinary thing to be able to do and to be able to take around. So Stoicism then would be your ability to control your own emotions, your judgments, your thoughts, your feelings.
Yeah.
Empathy, the way I use it, is a means of influencing the decisions, judgments, emotions of others through awareness and influence, right? So with
Okay.
Stoic empathy, not only do you gain control and power over yourself that you might not previously have had, but you also gain the ability to read the room and influence the room much more than you otherwise would have been able to through the empathy. And then you use the Stoicism to modulate your emotional involvement within any particular situation, which you sort of alluded to in the beginning of your introduction.
Yeah. So it's a powerful combination then, if you know how to do it.
Everyone knows how to do it. And I promise you, I can give you some examples, and everyone who's either listening or watching this podcast will relate to it and say, oh, I've done that. And so, really, my goal is to help you harness the power that is already within you so that you can apply it to more and more circumstances and then approach life with greater intentionality. So that when you're in a situation and tempers are flaring or anger is rising or anxiety is overcoming you or jealousy is taking over. Think of any emotion that you might deem to be in a particular situation to not serve you as much. You can behave in a way that's consistent with your morals, your values, who you want to be, and how you want to show up versus something that is just a reflexive condition of a
Mm.
brief state that is in your control.
Okay. How did you come to understand all this? This is obviously your
It's a,
major topic at the moment, isn't it? So how did you, what made you want
yeah,
to embrace
yeah.
this? How did you discover it?
Well, okay, so okay, here's the cool thing. And this is where actually this is one of those stories where your audience might think, "Oh, I've done this. I know how to do this." So, I actually grew up in Iran. I grew up in Iran. I was born in 77. The revolution happened in 79, the Islamic Revolution. And the first 10 years post-revolution was an incredibly bloody time in Iran because the regime was trying to take hold. And so it was very aggressive in the imposition of its norms. And the people were not yet accustomed to all of the new rules that they had to live by. It had not been their culture. It was
Mm,
something that was imposed upon them. And so they hadn't learned how to, quote unquote, live with it. They also hadn't learned how to bypass it in a safe manner.
mm,
And then in 1980, the Iran-Iraq War happened. The neighboring country, Iraq, declared war on Iran. The war lasted about 10 years. A million lives were lost. Put it in context, there's 40 million people in Iran at the time. So a million lives lost is one out of 40 people who died during this war, a lot of them civilians. By the time I left the country, there were up to 6 missile attacks a day into the city where I lived, the capital city. And during this time, again, remember, it's the 10 years post imposition of the regime. So there is not only this massive oppression that's happening to the people, but also electricity shortages because of the war, right? Bread
mm,
lines and hot water and not being there, et cetera, et cetera. During this time, I was impacted so deeply and incredibly by my remarkable parents. And here's the bit that your readers might be able to relate to. I want you to picture two people who are raising their children through this and the reaction that they have with their children as they maneuver through the labyrinth that is life, as they try to teach their children what good really is, right? What moral really is according to their values, but also keep them safe, keep them from getting murdered, keep yourself from getting murdered, right? All of those things. So, for instance, imagine an encounter with the morality police on the streets of Iran, which happened to me and my mom in the bazaar one time where I didn't have my headscarf on. And the morality guard was so incredibly angry and just seemed so big to me and had this assault rifle with her. And my mom had to diffuse the situation, having no power, no ability to utilize yelling, shouting, but her empathic understanding of the guard, her empathic understanding of me, which, by the way, were very different forms of empathy from one another,
mm,
permitted her to speak with the guard in a manner that diffused the situation. Or think about 3 o'clock in the morning. Imagine if you're that parent. You wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because the sirens went on and the missiles are coming. And you can tell from the sound of the missile how close it is, and you don't have time to make it to the bomb shelter that's in your basement. So you grab your kids and you take them to the door frame, right? And you just huddle under the door frame and you throw your body on them, not because it's going to stop the missile, but because at a minimum it'll block any glass or windows that shatter from the shock waves, right? And you're calm in that moment and decisive. And you know exactly what to do and how to protect your kids because of your empathic awareness of their vulnerability, right?
mm,
We've all done this. We've all been there. For me, this practice started with my parents. They didn't know what it was called. I didn't know what it was called. But that is how I grew up, although it wasn't until significantly later when I actually studied philosophy and became a lawyer and an advocate that I began to learn these terms and acquire the knowledge of being able to discuss this in a manner that is scientific and break it down.
mm.
But the act itself was present as a child.
That's an incredible story. Very, very powerful. So your mum is the one who shaped you in this
Yeah,
direction. It's
yeah,
funny. You were saying
yeah.
how about I was picturing all the bombs going off and the sirens. Our smoke alarm went off this morning at 3 in the morning. And
Did you have a
I
panic attack?
yes. Well, not,
Run
no,
around the
no,
house
no, I
like a
didn't. I
chicken?
didn't at all. But I understand in that moment, I was the protector. I had to jump up and just make sure what was that noise and go downstairs, putting my, putting some clothes on, running downstairs. What was that noise? And I dealt with it. It's
Right.
here.
Calm,
There's the
decisive
proof of
action.
it. I'm not
Yeah.
saying this to be flippant. It's the proof. I'm not making this up for
I
comedy
really hope you
value.
don't have a real fire tonight. By the way, for those who are just listening and not viewing this,
It's
James
not,
took the fire instead of deactivating it, just took the fire
I ripped it
fire
off the wall.
sensors out and
I did the
has them
same
on
thing.
his desk.
I did the same thing to the one 3 months ago as well for that one that's on my
Oh,
desk. But you'll be
wonderful.
pleased
Just
to
buy a
know
new one and slap
I
it on.
have.
That's the way to go.
I've got two more coming tomorrow, so my house will be safe as long as there's no fires tonight or
Oh
any
my
sirens
God.
going off. But I wasn't trying to be funny. But it was just the reality that I think I can imagine.
100%. Yes,
Yeah.
it's 100% true. Calm, decisive action, precisely because of your awareness of your circumstances, and
Yeah.
particularly those who are more vulnerable than you.
Exactly. That's what you have to do. Look after other people first.
Yeah.
That's my mentality in life. But you have to look after yourself still. Otherwise, you can't look after anybody else. That's that's how that goes. So once you learn the principles of all this, how can you form stronger relationships? Because many people listening, they're listening because they're single, just started out new relationships, and they want to have better tools to equip them to empower them in that way. What can you recommend for them?
There's so much. I mean, there is so much. Think about just the mere idea of being able to maneuver with calm, decisive action, right? With sound judgment that's aligned with your values, regardless of an emotional peak or valley that you might be experiencing.
Mhm.
So, your partner or your child or your best friend is in a confrontation with you or does something to make you angry, or you're afraid of something external to the relationship, and you have to bring that into the relationship. You can utilize this skill set to approach that relationship in as intentional a manner as you possibly can, and gain an intentionality as you move along, so that your tone, your body language, what you say, your actions themselves speak your truth and are not accidents of the moment. Oh, I didn't mean to do that, or I should have done this, or I didn't mean to say it like that, right? This is what we're looking to avoid, and allowing our wisdom to really come in and slow that game down for us in that moment, when otherwise it might be feeling so fast that we feel we're not in control. That is the goal here.
Where do you start though? Because
Yeah.
even I, as an expert, sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the moment, you will snap at each other, maybe, or you
Yeah.
will misunderstand something, and it can escalate very, very quickly. Of course, you can then calm the situation down quite quickly. But how do you
Yeah.
stop that happening?
So actually, the book Stoic Empathy is a how-to book, and it definitely has not only methodologies, but exercises and meditations. Let me give you an example right now. One example right now that the ancient Stoics used as a means of starting and as a means of continuing the practice. It always reminds me of yoga or meditation, because you can be completely untrained or you can be totally skilled, and you still need to engage in the practice of doing this work.
Mm.
One tool that's really, really useful, the Stoics called it discomfort embracing. And the idea of discomfort embracing, you see executives in Silicon Valley getting into ice baths, right? You see athletes pushing past the broken ankle and the sweat to finish the race. You see all of this happening because what they're doing is they're training their bodies to be accustomed to that state of arousal, that state of discomfort, right? So that when they're in it, they can behave rationally, right? Think the boxer who gets punched in the face repeatedly and yet maintains their strategy in the boxing match, right?
Mhm.
Except it's life punching you in the face, relationships punching you in the face, your own feelings punching you in the face, and you maintaining your calm. Think athlete pushing through the pain, except it's probably not physical. This is emotional pain, right? So you need to learn to embrace the discomfort. And that's going to be different depending on who you are. Some people extremely uncomfortable with vulnerability. Do not ask them to put themselves out there and expose themselves thus, because that is the discomfort that they are completely opposed to. So for those individuals, that is exactly what they have to learn to embrace. Many little practice sessions, right? Instead of doing your ice bath for 3 minutes in the morning, or in addition to doing your ice bath for 3 minutes in the morning, choose one person in your life who you truly trust, who has shown up for you time after time after time for years and proven themselves, and try for 3 minutes to be completely vulnerable with them, right? Now, for other people, it's not vulnerability, it's confrontation. Confrontation makes them extremely uncomfortable, and they would rather just maintain the peace. So if you're that person, try. Go into a store where haggling is appropriate, is an appropriate form of transacting business, and engage in a negotiation and realize that what you're doing is you're engaging in with this human being to resolve a difference of opinion. In that case, it's how much a product should cost, right?
Mm.
So that you can reach a mutual understanding that will beneficially serve both of you. And try to get yourself used to it as much as possible. So it really depends on what your emotional state is. And what the book does is it offers you these practices and these tools and these mechanisms to help you get there. But I will tell you, no matter who you are and no matter what your struggle is, meditate, exercise, eat well. These things make a really big difference to your ability to control your body. We know this because we know if we drink too much, we lose control of our body, right? We know this because we know the more we meditate, the more responsible we can be for our own breathing. We know we can control our actual heart rate if we've meditated before, our blood pressure, right? The tension in our muscles, right? All of the physical components of an emotion. Now let's try to make those into cognitive and then make it all sort of beam at the same time and make it active. And that is the purpose of this book, is to help you do that.
That sounds an incredible thing to do if you can learn it. How long does it take?
To learn skill one, it takes 2 minutes, right?
Okay.
To become perfect at it, I haven't met anybody yet. So,
Silly question, really, wasn't it?
but here's what I will tell you. I will tell you through daily practice, it's like anything else. You'll see an immediate transformation, right? Because the initial climb is steep, very, very steep. You will at some point plateau and start to see a much smaller climb because you've achieved a level of proficiency that is so extraordinary and so far away from where you were that your room for growth at this point is only in smaller increments. But in the beginning, you will see fast improvement, fast. But it's not going to be overnight. And what's really great about this methodology is especially the Stoic idea of duality of control or dichotomy of control, is it also helps you figure out what is actually in your control and what is not in your control so that you can release that which is not. For example, a past action, right? Not in your control. Nothing you could do about that. It's gone. All you can do is modify your behavior today or tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
So the book also teaches you as you err, as you make mistakes, as I have done so many times throughout my life, instead of torturing myself over that error, how do I recognize it wisely, adjust my strategy moving forward, and try to be a little bit of a better person today?
Yeah. That's all you can do. Start with the small steps.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's talk about something that happens a lot to my clients. I have a lot of clients who, you touched upon this at the start, actually. That's why I want to come back to it now. They have been hurt many times. They've been rejected, had bad experience in relationships. So they've built a bit of a wall up around themselves. And
Mhm.
this stops them getting out and meeting new people, and also from being true and being vulnerable. We touched upon that at the start. What
Scary.
advice, yeah, it is. And my job is to help them become more vulnerable. And I always say the fact they're talking to me in the first place is vulnerability, of course. And that is the
Mhm.
start of the process. What advice do you have to them? Because so many of my clients at the moment seem to have these walls that they've just built up around themselves that's stopping them meeting somebody.
I will give you some advice, but let me start by acknowledging something.
Yeah,
I have the same struggle. I had a tough childhood growing up. And
yeah,
you saw the tip of the iceberg in this small conversation. And I also learned how to put walls up. To this day, when I go see my therapist, it takes the first 15 minutes before some of the walls start to come down. And am able to actually say things to her that are authentic and meaningful and vulnerable, right? I also have this thing where I really don't want to be pitied by anyone. I just don't. It bothers me so much because it makes me think that they think I'm weak, right? Isn't that weird? So I don't want to tell you about this feeling that I have right now because I don't want you to pity me because I'm fine. I really am. I'm going to be fine. So I have the same struggles. It's just how you cope with them and how I cope with mine that has transformed. So the way in which I like to think of it and the way in which I like to approach it is the thrill of the exposure. Putting yourself out there is risky. You're not wrong. And you do need to engage in that process wisely. You can't just walk outside and make yourself open to the entire world with all of its cruel intentions.
No.
And yet, you know there are people in your life you can trust. You know there are people who have earned it. And you know how other people can earn it. Or if you don't, that's probably where you should start. And so, because you know that, because you have the awareness of that knowledge, you know that you need to put yourself out there with some people in order to grow. And you can choose who. I'm not here to tell you. I don't I don't pretend to be any kind of guru. I don't pretend to moralize to anyone. You decide for yourself the level of vulnerability that you want to take into a particular relationship. It could be, I have someone stalking me right now. I'm not going to go be vulnerable with that guy, right? I mean, but at the same time, with my husband of 20 years, or with my children, or with my best friend, right? These are relationships that matter to me, that are positive in my life, and that I want to maintain. And it's still scary. It's scary for me, even with my husband of 20 years. I'm that person. I would have been your client not too long ago. So it's scary because you show up and you can get hurt. And he's also hurt me because people hurt each other because that's life, right? And so that's just, especially long-term relationships, they're complex. And at some point you just have to make the decision. I'm going to engage in the thrilling, dangerous act of making myself vulnerable in this situation because of everything I have to gain from it, because I have the knowledge that I will survive the pain, the sucker punch, even that I will survive, right? And because it's worth it to me, right? It's worth it to me. And if I get hit, I'll take the hit because it's worth it to me. And then I go in with that intentional decision in those select few cases, and they can be really small to begin with. And you want to habituate yourself, right? The way we get over a fear of heights, go up one step, then two steps, then three steps. You can't just, you could jump off an airplane. That's another way of doing it, right? With vulnerability, that's a little bit more difficult to sustain because it's not a one-time jump. You have to keep jumping and jumping and jumping and jumping and jumping, right? And so it's a little bit easier to do it through habituation, although the book actually discusses both methodologies. And so that's what I would say. I would say, I understand that. I don't think it's irrational. And I am also convinced that you can modulate and modify those walls, deciding who to put them down for, who to crack them open for, who to completely shatter them for, because you have gained the wisdom in life to be able to make those decisions. You can do this. And if you get sucker punched, you will at some point. You'll be fine then too. And at least you lived your life with some authenticity and purpose and a truth to yourself because you decided this was worth it to you. Not Shermin Kruse or anyone else, but you, because you're unhappy, because you're in James's office, not able to find meaningful connections.
Yeah.
It's not working. Try something different. Grasp at a new strategy and not the same old thing over and over again.
I love that. So much powerful advice there. Very much true. What you were saying there about the becoming vulnerable, doing it slowly and repeating it and over again, and talking about how the athletes train. That's called
Yeah.
conditioning, isn't it? And they
Yeah.
will my wife is a martial artist, and they have to hit themselves, or not hit themselves, but they hit each other on a
Yeah.
regular basis to condition themselves to getting hurt and to getting punched, so that the body gets used to it. And that's how it should be with anything. I think you have to keep doing things over and over again. You can plunge yourself in that ice bath, but then you're going to have the shock of it at the same time. I'm thinking of doing that myself, but it scares me, and because it scares me, that also excites me.
Yeah.
So
Do you want me to give you a cheat method for the ice bath that helps
yeah,
you get used to it? Okay. So this is not what I would recommend in the long run, but in the short run, what you can do is get in the ice bath, which is an extremely uncomfortable 30 seconds.
yeah,
But then if you stay completely still, the heat of your body, the water adjusts to the heat of your body. And so you're no longer all that uncomfortable. So you can modulate, you can stay in that ice bath, and it's a lot more tolerable now because the water has adapted. And you won't be able to help it. You'll move a little bit, right? Your fingers
yeah,
will move, or your legs will move, or you'll shiver or something like that. And as soon as you shiver, there's new water that now has to adapt. So in an ideal world, what you want is you want to be constantly moving in that ice bucket. But this, in fact, is how most people do the ice plunges. They don't realize it's kind of a cheat, but
yeah.
they get it. It's really not 3 minutes. It's just those first 30 seconds. And once you're in there, I promise you it'll be a much easier transition to, okay, now I'm going to move. And then you move, right? I promise you it will be. And so it's a way of getting that particular practice started that
Yeah.
I found to be very effective.
I've got a partial cheat to it myself, and the cheat
Okay.
is that
Oh, tell me.
well, it's only unique to me. On my left hand side of my body, I've got a trapped nerve, so I don't really feel pain as much in this arm. So I can put my arm into an ice bath, and I'm not going to. I could go dead after 3 minutes. Doesn't matter. It's fine.
That's
But on a
hilarious.
serious note, my son, he's 11 years old. He can run into the sea, freezing cold sea, anytime. Doesn't phase him at
It's
all.
incredible.
My
Children
younger,
can,
they can
yeah,
just do it because children don't have the same fear, that they want to get in the sea, and that they overcome it. And the
yeah,
same thing can be carried out as an adult in your emotional levels, because
yeah,
sometimes you have to jump into that sea and you have to
yeah.
just do it and see what's going to happen. You're not going to drown. You're only in the shallow area, and some good things can happen. You might have a really pleasant time. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm tying that back into the podcast again with that little bit of waffling on about ice baths for me, because I
I
think
love it. I love
it's
it.
all relevant to anything. And
100.
it really is. But let's build upon that onto confidence as well,
Okay.
because I want to talk about something that you actually put to me in one of our initial emails about unshakable confidence and how important that is. How can you get unshakable confidence?
So one thing I want to be really careful with is
Yeah,
we always want to pair unshakable confidence with a sort of humility, with an understanding that we ourselves are in a growth process, if we're lucky,
yeah,
and therefore improving, and therefore we'll look back upon today when we approach this situation with unshakable confidence
yeah,
and think about the things that we would do differently now. And if we don't take that growth mindset into our unshakable confidence, we don't grow.
mm,
So do take this with that combination in mind. The unshakable confidence, I would say for me, most of where I get it is the dichotomy of control.
yeah,
I really try to think what is in my control and what is out of my control. So the Stoics talk about an archer. I like the more modern example of darts. Let me give you the darts example. You're a darts player, you're going to the pub, you're going to play a game of darts, okay? And you're such a good darts player, you've got your own little kit that you bought from the store, right? I actually used to sell them at a game store I worked at when I was younger. I sold pool tables and darts. And so you come, you buy them, you weigh them, it's stable, it's measured, the tip is put in perfectly, everything is sharp, everything is balanced, and you're well practiced and you got good sleep the night before and you ate well today and you show up on time, right? And you get set up in the correct position and you take aim and you release your dart. Once you have released your dart, where that dart lands is not in your control. It isn't.
mm,
You can be confident that it's going to hit the bullseye or completely a wreck. It doesn't really matter. It's not in your hands. It's not a question of confidence. This is now an imagined reality. You don't have control because there could be a slight imperceptible pivot right on the bullseye that makes your dart go awry. There could be an unfortunate drunk man who gets pushed into your dart right in the middle of your toss.
That's
There
most British pubs, I would say. Yep.
there's a lot of things that could interfere with this, right? So I want you to gain your confidence from your preparation and your process, and from the fact that the rest of it is beyond your control, right? And if you didn't practice enough, or if you didn't show up on time, or if you didn't check the balance of your darts before you showed up, I want you to gain your confidence from the knowledge that next time you will, right? The next dart, because there's always a next dart, right? And so you want to make sure that you're gaining your confidence from the process, from the integrity with which you are approaching the process, and not from the result, which is beyond your control. You can't control what other people do. You can't control what other people say. You can only control your responses, your replies, and how you approach the next person in light of this conversation. This is what is in your control. Take your confidence into that. And I think you'll find it's highly rational. And over time, it'll become very inherent. And you'll approach the situation. And this, by the way, why we experience things like anxiety. If we didn't prepare at all for a test and we show up, we're extra nervous because we didn't prepare. And we could rely on luck to get us through, and that's okay, right? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But if you really want to ace that test, you should probably study, right? And prepare yourself for that test, right? And you should probably balance that studying with all of the other things you want to ace in your life. You don't want to practice darts to the detriment of your health and relationships, because those things also matter to you. So you have to balance them out, right? Utilize your wisdom to approach your confidence within the process, within your preparation, and show up knowing you did what you could. You did what you could. And that's okay. That's all you can control.
It is. You can't blame yourself if you did your best. That's all we can do ultimately.
Yeah,
And the same is
exactly.
true for all sorts of relationships in that way. Not everyone's going to like us. We're not going to like everyone that we meet, and therefore every opportunity you meet is just that, an opportunity. And I agree with you completely. I didn't realize you have to weigh darts. That's something I've learned as well. Funnily enough, is that true? Do you
Well, you have
weigh
to make sure
them?
it's balanced properly. If
I
it's,
suppose so.
way too heavily in one end or the other end,
Yeah.
then it's not going to stay on course in the same way. I just want to
Yeah.
dovetail on what you said about relationships. Yeah, we're not going to like everyone, not everyone's going to like us, but also even people we really love and like, some days we don't like, right? Or some moments or some conversations, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to work through that inner conflict as well. So that is also a fact of life. In fact, the more someone is in your life, the more likely you are to encounter conflict with them, because they're in your life all the time. They're there being impacted by your decisions and impacting your decisions at every step. And therefore, the likelihood of conflict is just higher with long-term relationships and constant exposure. It's a lot easier when it's a new person and you barely ever see them. So don't allow that conflict or that bump in the road to shatter your confidence. It's just a part of the dart throwing process, okay?
Yeah.
Embrace that component of the process, evaluate, step back. Do I even like throwing darts? Yeah, I do. I love throwing darts. It's great. It's just tonight isn't going really well for me, right? So I'm going to need to figure out how to make it better tomorrow. And that's how you approach that.
You stop playing darts, you go and play pool instead. That's the solution for that particular evening. That's how I see it. Go and do something that you do
Good,
enjoy.
good round of nine ball. Yeah.
Good round of that, absolutely. How do you develop all this to become truly irresistible as well? That's something that interests me.
How do I do it to become irresistible? Is that the
Yes,
question?
yeah, yeah.
Am
How
I
do you become?
irresistible? Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying? You're saying I'm
I'm irresistible, obviously, but to my
oh,
listeners,
okay.
if they want to become more irresistible in general, how do they become that way? Because
So
yeah,
here's what I would say. This is a really good question. How do you become irresistible?
yeah.
So I always found as a woman, and
Well, that's
you know,
enough, isn't it? To be honest,
it's enough. Yeah. You walk into a bar and
that's
end up
it.
discussion.
Yeah.
Many guys.
That's what happens to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
As I was going to say, as a woman, especially one who is aging, right? I'm 47 now, so I'm pushing 50. I used to model when I was in my 20s. So think about how the response of the world to me has changed and what your expectations of that might be. But I will tell you, the world responds to power and kindness. That's it. That's what people find irresistible. Power and kindness, right? Now, there might be afraid of power, period, and listen to it and follow it. But if you want to be irresistible, pair it with caring and kindness. And if you could manage to do that within yourself, power and kindness, and find that balance, you will be irresistible as long as you like who you are. And this sounds so corny and so tacky, but it's so true. If you approach the situation with a love of yourself and where you are, despite the humility that, oh my gosh, I still have so much growth to do for real. And I don't need to go around saying it because I know it in my core, right? I know that I can grow from every conversation I have with another human being if I have the conversation the right way. That's going to be a very different conversation. And that is a confidence in and of itself. And it's an extraordinary gift that you can give to yourself. And people will find it irresistible. That doesn't mean they won't hurt you, okay? Because they might not be experiencing the same level of control that you are. They have their own hurts, right? And their own pains and their own traumas and their own reasons for not having achieved the control that you have over your vulnerability, right? And if that's the case, you have another decision to make. How do you respond to this? But you cannot control their readiness.
Of course not. So it's power and kindness with a
Yeah.
splash of vulnerability as well thrown in, I would say, from what you're saying
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, I like that.
Maybe I am irresistible then, because I try and be those things.
Yes, well,
I try my best.
I
I try
like
my
how this
best.
podcast is really all about how irresistible James Preece is. So
It's not. It's
works
not.
out.
I was gonna ask you something as well. This is a compliment towards you. Actually, I'm going to throw back at you. I was going to say this at the end, but I'll say it now because we're getting towards the end. Are you doing an audio book of your new book?
Yes, yes, the audiobook is out. And
Great.
actually the audiobook, the my publisher is Hay House, and
Yeah.
they had me do something really interesting with the audiobook. They had me record 10 extra audio tracks of exercises as well as meditations with the audiobook. So I would say there's a lot of bonus material actually in the audiobook. And I think it'll help you familiarize yourself with the skills. And in the sections where I'm talking about things like tone, I can do it very differently in the audiobook because I narrate the audiobook. So I can demonstrate the tonal differences to you in a way that is far more difficult in text.
Yeah, because you've got an amazing voice, so I can see the benefits of the audio book there,
Thank
which is
you. I,
great. There you go. That's your compliment at you because it's
I'll take it. It's a
and I
feather
mean
in
that.
my cap.
It's
Yeah.
very very calming and knowledgeable voice. You touched upon meditations there. Do
Yeah,
you? I guess you meditate yourself, but do you
I
have
do.
any other sort of daily habits or routines?
Well, that was actually going to be the daily routine that I was going
Oh,
to
was
talk about,
it?
is the
Okay.
meditation. But here's the advice I was going to give.
Yeah.
This is my meditative daily routine, okay? Every day I take a hot shower, okay? And remember, when I was growing up, we would have water shortages. I never got to take a hot shower growing up. You could take, a pot of water and boil it on the stove and add it to the cold bath water and take a bath, and that was tolerable. But the idea of a hot shower is not really a daily hot shower. That's crazy. That is not something that would happen. And still, in many areas of the world, most areas of the world, most people do not have access to daily hot showers. So when I go into this hot shower, right, even if I'm only in it for a few minutes, and this is also a way of completely demystifying meditation and taking the pressure off of it, what I like to do is I like to focus on the water as it hits my skin. I just like to be present, even if it's just for 2, 3 minutes of the shower, with the way the water feels against my skin and the cleansing ritual that I'm engaged in, and the sound of the water itself, and the feel of emergence from that, that feels clean and refreshed and beautiful, right? And I have just meditated by finding myself, my skin, my senses in that water. And I promise you, it's a lot easier than going to a 3-day meditation retreat. You're just in that shower for 3 minutes. If showers aren't your thing, pick your thing. Do it for 3 minutes. I recommend doing it for 3 minutes, 3 times a day. You can literally do this making your children's breakfast in the morning. I am making breakfast. Listen to the sounds of the bowls clanking and the bacon sizzling. Be aware of your footsteps as you maneuver around the kitchen, right? And just be present in that moment for 3 minutes. If you can do it 3 times a day, that's great. I actually talk about this in the book too. It's the 3x3 meditation rule. And it really, really helps. If you can even do it once a day for 3 minutes, while engaged in something else, you can achieve the result of having had that meditative experience. You emerge from that shower, I promise you, a better version of yourself than you entered it.
I'm going to try that right after this episode. I'm going to have a shower before I go to unwind for the evening, and I'm going to try it for 3 minutes and feel it, feel the sound of it, and hitting my skin, and smell the I like to smell the products. That's quite a nice thing to add into it, isn't it? If you've got nice shampoo, that's what I like.
You can also do those shower steamers. Sometimes I do the shower steamers, and they're like 50 cents, and you buy them. You can get them everywhere, and you just put them in the shower, and the water and the steam releases the aroma. But you don't even have to do any of that. You can just get in your shower and feel the water, and that's enough. And it really is an extraordinary gift that most people in the world right now do not have. And whatever your problems are, and they're real, right? They're real. They're not imagined problems. But whatever your problems are, this is a gift that you have in this moment. And you can be present with this gift for just a couple minutes and allow it to improve your day.
What a great way to end the episode. Before we do go, though, I want to just ask you, if someone wants to find out more about your book or about you, how do they do that? I presume it's on all the usual platforms like Amazon, and I'll put the links on the website. How can they find out more?
All the usual platforms, absolutely, most bookstores, and all you have to do is Google Stoic empathy, and it will be available to you. It depends on what country you're in. The distribution rights are going to be different. So if you put in Stoic empathy, it'll be much more local availability. And it will tell you exactly what bookstores or libraries. Of course, it is on Amazon. And if you're busy and you just have time to press a button and have it come to your door, bless you, man, I'm not going to judge you. Press the button, have it come to your door. It's okay.
Or go to your local bookstore, find the book, put it out in front of the other books, and let everyone, maybe that's a gift to somebody else.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, be my little marketing agent. Yeah.
Absolutely do it. But thank you so much for joining me today. I know we could talk a lot more. I better let you go because you've got a lot to get on with, but absolute pleasure. I hope we talk again another time. And I'm going to be buying your book and listening to the audiobook, and maybe it will chill me out a little bit. So thank you so much for today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. It was great to be here.
Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespreece.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.